All right, so it looks like we are recording, and I will now turn it over to Tinashe and Beth, who are here from Text Help to talk to us about Equatio. Welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, can you see that?
Yep, looks great.
Yep.
Okay, so if I can just get everyone, I know there's only 3 of you, so if you want to just drop that information in the chat. I know that you are, I think all 3 of you are like, I know there's Julie and her mom and Shannon, and I think that Julie and Shannon, you are AT folks, right? It would help me to know what grade levels and subjects you support. Of course, Equatio is a math tool specifically. It also helps with science, so I do want to point that out at the beginning. It's just this idea that we're going to be talking about math. Okay. I see, Julie. All right. Let's see. Let me look in the chat. Okay, so Shannon works with teachers. And Shannon, what grade levels do those teachers teach? Yeah, it looks like, so Lori's here to kind of just observe and take things in, correct? Okay, got it. All right. Then now that I know a little bit about you, let me tell you a little bit about me. So again, my name is Tinashe Blanchet, and I am the product specialist for Equatio at Text Help. I'm a former high school math teacher. I taught high school mathematics for about 10 years before I became a full-time trainer and consultant. I'm also a Google certified innovator and trainer. I am assuming you're probably a little googly in your district. Is that true? Are you using like Google Drive, Google Classroom, those kinds of things? So I can talk about that as well. Math education is my thing. I'm currently working on my PhD in math ed at Auburn. So I should be able to talk, speak to how you can use Equatio to enhance, math instruction in your district. And of course, from an accessibility standpoint. Now, this is a link. Give me a second and I'll paste it in the chat for you so you can just click on it. So give me a second. There you go. So if you don't get anything else from the time that we have together, make sure that you get this link. This is a really important link. This is a link to a resource document for Equatio. This is a living document, so I don't recommend that you try to download or save this, because then you'll miss out on updates that I make pretty frequently to this page. So this can be your one-stop shop. There's also a link to the Equatio Academy on this document. This is also another place that you can go to learn even more about Equatio. Now, keep in mind that, at this point, we only have about 25 minutes remaining. So I'm not going to be able to do like a big deep dive with Equatio today. So I'm hoping that I'm going to leave you wanting more. And this is where you're going to go when you want to learn more about Equatio. So I'll paste that link in one more time. I'm not sure if you caught it, Michelle. So this is a link for a resource document so that you can learn more about Equatio after today's session. So I want to start by just talking about what Equatio is. I want to make sure we're all on the same page about that. So at its core, Equatio is a really powerful equation editor. And when I say equation editor, it's kind of like bum, bum, ba-dum, bum. Like folks are like, okay, well, don't need that. Actually, you do, and let me tell you why, okay? So again, with your focus being on technology and accessibility, how's it going with math? I want to hear from you, Shannon and Julie and Michelle. Do you have Chromebooks in your district?
So we do in Duluth Public Schools, we have Chromebooks, but I would say that math is the one area that I get the most questions about, and people are looking for more resources in the area.
What? I would have never guessed that. Let me tell you about my experience with math, Julie. So as I already mentioned, I'm working on my PhD in math ed, right? And so you know what that means? That means I have to take math classes. And so I am a remote student. I live in Georgia and I attend college in Alabama, right? And so I signed up for a math class. And on the first day of class, the professor, I asked him, would it be okay if I participate via Zoom? And he was like, yeah, that's fine. And so then he turns on the Zoom, like the camera, and he had pointed the camera of his laptop towards the green chalkboard that he was writing the math on. Okay. And then there was like a glare, so I really couldn't see it. I dropped the class the next day. Now, fun fact, I actually have to take his class this summer, so I'll be back. But I share that to say, to me, that is a great little vignette into the state of math education versus other subjects with regards to technology, right? Because you're not going to walk into an ELA classroom and see a teacher writing on a chalkboard, right? You're not going to walk into social studies and see that. You're not going to walk into even most science classes and see that. But how often in your district do you walk into a math classroom and feel like you've kind of stepped into a time machine, right? Where the kids are all writing notes in their notebooks and the teacher is doing chalk and talk at the board. And it's really unfortunate because we all know the impact that technology has had on teaching and learning. And there are lots of benefits that students are experiencing when they use those Chromebooks that they're not getting when they walk into a math class. And so that's really the solution that Equatio presents. That's the problem that we're trying to solve here, is to get students to be able to use technology in all of their classes and have those benefits with accessibility and even just organization, right? A lot of our students are not good with paper. They don't keep up with it. But again, they're being asked to do that in math classes more often than not. And so that's really what Equatio is all about. So at its core, Equatio is a really powerful equation editor that can generate math notation. But you can see we have this 360-degree approach to doing mathematics where we go beyond a traditional equation editor, like the one that's built into Google Docs or the one that's in Microsoft Word. We go beyond that from the math notation and we get into the math terminology that students need to learn, as well as the underlying math concepts they need to be successful, that they need to deeply understand. So today we're going to take a quick look at Equatio MathSpace. Equatio MathSpace is a web-based application that allows you to use the functionality of Equatio on any device. So those iPads, for example, Michelle, students will be able to use Equatio MathSpace on those devices. And Equatio MathSpace doesn't require you to install anything. You can just visit the website and start using it right away. Another great thing about MathSpace is that teachers have the ability to communicate with their students on MathSpace. They can say, here's this assignment, assign them a MathSpace. They can do the work in MathSpace, send it back to the teacher. The teacher can grade it. They can give them feedback. So it's just a really powerful tool for teaching and learning mathematics. Now, before we look at MathSpace, I do want to make sure that you know all the different places where Equatio is available. If you have seen Equatio before, then you're probably familiar with this one, Equatio for Google. Equatio for Google is a Chrome extension that runs on a Chrome browser on any laptop or desktop device. When you're using Equatio for Google, you'll have access to Equatio across Google Drive. So that includes docs, forms, slides, sheets, and drawings. Equatio is also available on Office 365. So if you have any folks who are using Microsoft Office online, then they can use that same Chrome extension there as well. Now, if you're a Google district, then it's unlikely that folks are doing this, but I can promise you that they're doing this. You have teachers who use what I like to call legacy documents, documents that they've created in Microsoft Word. Maybe they have some PowerPoint files. So there is a version of Equatio that integrates with those files as well, okay? Then we have Equatio MathSpace, which we'll take a look at in just a second. And then, are you using any LMSs other than Google Classroom in your district? What are you using?
We've got Canvas in Duluth, and I know some of the surrounding areas are using Infinite Campus as well too. Are there others out there?
So that's perfect because we do have a version of Equatio that integrates with those learning management systems as well. So what this means is that teachers will be able to insert math into not only their Google Classrooms, but also into their Canvas courses, as well as those Infinite Campus classes as well. So we do have integration with lots of different learning management systems so that the same math that they will be doing like in a MathSpace or in a Google Drive file could go directly into that LMS. A lot of times teachers may want to do assessments in the LMS, and so they will be able to insert that digital math there as well, okay? So It is demo time. So I want to stop for a second. I know we just had someone else join. So I want to pause for a second and see if we have any noticings and wonderings before we continue. And Michelle and Jamie, can you do me a favor and hop in and chat and tell me what I'm going to put, this was the first slide that I showed, and this kind of helps me so that I can customize today's session to your needs. So if you can just tell me in the chat, like what, if you're in a support role, what is your title? Who do you work with? What grade levels do you support? So that I'll know, what your needs are, or at least I could try. Now, while you're working on that, I'm going to drop a link in the chat. This is the link to the math space that we're going to be taking a look at. So that's where we're going next, if you want to follow me there. Okay, got it, Michelle. All right, got it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and join you here. And like I said, we're not going to be able to do a deep dive with math space, but let's take a look at some of the functionality that you may want to be aware of, okay? So when I go to the MathSpace website, right, you can see I have all these different math spaces that I've created. Now, something that people tend to think of when they think of an equation editor, they think of something like this, right? They think of equations, right? And so a lot of times Equatio gets pigeonholed as a secondary tool, right? If kids are not learning how to solve for X, then why would they need an equation editor? Well, I want you to consider that anytime you're doing math, whether it's elementary level or high school level, you're dealing with mathematical notation, right? That is the reason why teachers are still doing handwritten work and pulling out, the chalk in those classes, is because even if they want to do something like this, right? This is an elementary level fraction addition problem. This is something that is not easy to type unless you have a tool like Equatio. Giving it a moment to load. I'm being patient. There we go, right? So here's an example of something that you would use Equatio to create, because you could use the equation editor in Google Docs, but I can promise you it's not going to be fun, right? And then think about the fact that this is a tool that is not just for teachers, it's for students. So to ask a student to do this in a Google Doc, it's not happening, right? But with Equatio, they have lots of different ways that they could generate something like this. So they could type it in. We have shortcuts like the / button for a fraction bar. So if I wanted to type this in, I could just type in 1/2 plus 1/3 equals 5/6, right? I can't do that in a regular document because it wouldn't convert that to a fraction, right? And then what happens is you get this weird notation that doesn't quite look like what they're accustomed to seeing in their textbook, right? And that can cause confusion for your students. Now, some students may prefer to use handwriting recognition, and again, this really bridges the gap between the way we're accustomed to doing math and digital math, right? So that means I can still handwrite it, but then I don't have to submit that, right? I can submit that digital math. As a teacher, if I want to create more digital accessible resources for my students, I could do that, but I'm not having to navigate a really difficult to use equation editor. I can just handwrite it, and I get that digital accessible math that I can share with my students, okay? And so just lots of different reasons for why this could be powerful for every one of your students and teachers. Now, another option that we have is speech input, right? So speech input means that I could click on this record button and say 1/2 plus 1/3 equals 5/6. New line. Now, it doesn't like the new line. I was showing off there. So I won't do that, but I'll just, I can go over here and use something called multimodal input. I like to use this for simpler things. I just got a little overzealous there. So what I could do is just kind of edit this and go to the next line, okay? Now, another cool thing about speech input is that it also picks up language. So let's say you have a student who speaks Spanish. then that student will be able to change this language to Spanish, and then they will be able to say that math in Spanish, and it would still give them that digital math. So this will be a great one for your ELLs as well, right? And then for you, Michelle and Jamie, when you're dealing with students who have disabilities that may prevent them from being able to write, that speech input tool could be a big deal for them as well, because now they're not having to type things in or write them down. They can just say it, okay? And sometimes you may have students who are not good at writing, but they can type. And so you saw how I was able to type in that equation as well. And there are lots of little shortcuts and prediction items that they can use. So I want to go back. For your students who are taking more advanced math courses, they can use prediction to put things in as well. So if I type in the word quadratic, for example, look at how it brings up the quadratic formula for me. This is also a really great feature for students who have the specific accommodation that they need to be provided with a formula sheet when they take a test. Does that sound familiar? So for those students, rather than having to generate a formula sheet, if they have access to prediction, they can just type in the name of the formula that they need, and it will automatically show up. So let's say that they're learning about area and volume, another elementary level topic, right? So when I type in the word area, look at all of the area formulas that are showing up for me. If I type in the word volume, right? All of those volume formulas that are coming up for me as well. So this is also a really powerful feature that we have built in. Now, beyond that, if I go back to some of the math spaces that I've created, I want to make sure that I face head on this misconception about, oh, this looks great for like middle school, maybe high school, but what about elementary, right? So I want to make sure I show you this example. This is one of my favorite examples of how you can use Equatio and math space in particular for elementary level math, right? So we've already talked about the fact that it may not seem complex, but there's a lot of mathematical notation that happens in elementary classes that you need an equation editor to do digitally, right? So we have fractions. Think about a long division problem. How would you feel about having to type that one, right? Or maybe just the division symbol in general, or even the multiplication symbol. How often are teachers putting a letter X, right, instead of the multiplication symbol? And how confusing can that be for a student who's going to be going into algebra in a year or two? So just thinking about all those little notations and symbols that we use, even in those early grades, where an equation editor could really be beneficial. And so here in Math Space, you can see I have that mathematical notation. I have a freehand drawing tool that I can use to mark this up. So if you have interactive whiteboards in your district, like smart boards, Promethean boards, this would be a great thing to use on those as well. So in addition to those iPads, Michelle, having those interactive whiteboards being used in this way can be really cool as well. And then we have things like this, the smart shapes. So what happens with the smart shape, and it's found right here in this menu, is that you can draw one of these shapes, and then you have the ability to customize it for the particular problem you're working on. So right now I have it set to 1/2, but let's say I want to do something with 3/4. I'm going to change the number of segments to 4 and the number of shaded segments to 3, okay? So this is a tool that your math teachers are going to love. And what we have to do when we're showing teachers how to use technology, a lot of times they get afraid because they're like, oh no, you want me to learn a new thing and I just learned the old thing. And what this is about is not, oh no, you have to learn a new tool, but how can we use this functionality to make our lives easier, right? How can we show what we know in new ways? And remember that this tool is really primarily a student tool. So it doesn't necessarily mean that me as a teacher that I have to learn it. What if I just gave it to my students and said, look, I want you to use this to show me what you know, and let them figure it out, right? And then come back to you. So that's another way that this could be utilized. And then we also have our virtual manipulatives that are in here, and you can see how this is set up to illustrate this specific problem. And so another thing we also want to note about Equatio is that Equatio is not a curriculum, right? Equatio is a tool that is meant to be a layer on top of whatever curriculum you already have. It's giving you a way to kind of represent it differently, to go deeper with the math, which is something that I'm always advocating for, right? And so even if you have, like, let's say the teacher gives the kids a worksheet with 20 problems on it. For some students, that can be really overwhelming, right? And so the idea is that you could take Equatio Math Space and give them a page for each problem, right? And then they have this powerful toolkit that they can use to kind of represent their knowledge in lots of different ways. So I'm going to stop for a second. I know we only have about 9 minutes remaining. So the first time I asked for noticings and wonderings, it was like, does anyone have any noticings or wonderings? This time I'm hoping to hear from some of you. So, and I know Julie is the leader here, so I'm gonna relieve you of your duties, Julie. I'm asking, everyone else, if you can hop on the mic and give me either a noticing, which would be something that you observed, and a wondering would be a question that you have based on what you see. So even if you don't have a wondering, you gotta have a noticing. So let me hear what you got.
You're putting us on the spot.
I don't mean to do that.
You are a very good presenter, by the way. Yes, this excites me. Just because the voice activation and that you can have a page just to figure out a problem. I hope I can get people on board to use it. So that's what I have at this moment.
Me too. And you know what? I'm glad that you said that, because there's a very important feature that I forgot to show you. And again, because you're someone who's dealing with students who have disabilities, we've talked about some features for students who have hearing disabilities, but what about those who have visual impairments, right? And so when you have visual impairments, visual impairments, you definitely want a screen reader, right? And when you use a traditional screen reader, it doesn't usually do a great job at reading even mathematical notation as simple as this, right? And so another really powerful feature of Equatio is that it has a screen reader that can read the mathematics accurately, okay? And so if I hit a play button, it'll do this.
3 lines, line 1. 1/2 plus 1/3 equals 5/6, line 2.
And so when I'm here in math space, I can select any math that's in here and hit that play button. This play button will also pick up on the language settings. So remember earlier how I said with speech input, when you change the language, you can speak that language. Well, when you change the language and you hit that play button, it will read it aloud in that language. So think about how powerful that would be for your ELL, so they could have math read aloud to them in their language, right? Another thing that I find is that this is still, I want to be clear that Equatio is not necessarily a tool that students with visual impairments, like if you have a kid who is totally blind, they're probably not going to be able to do this without help, right? And my experience is that if you have a kid who's totally blind, they probably do have help, right? But what if you have a student who has someone who is there to read to them, but they're in an advanced math course, right? And they have something like this. Okay, so if they have mathematical, this is a statistics problem, okay? And this is the kind of math, and to be clear, math like this can come up even in algebra depending on the level of proficiency of the reader, right? So even things as simple as f of x, if you haven't seen it in a while, you may not really know how to read that properly. And so if I have a kid who's doing this, I can imagine the anxiety of the reader who's like, now, I'm gonna give this a try, but I don't know. So again, this has the ability to read that complex mathematics as well.
Minus mu sub 2 tilde n of open paren 0, comma the square root of the fraction.
Right? So it can read that notation accurately as well. So I know I've kind of played up the elementary a lot, and I like to do that because a lot of times people don't think that it is appropriate for elementary, but it can handle advanced math, right? So when you talk about, a lot of you are working with all grades, right, birth to 12th, then you need to know that Equatio is a tool that can do that as well, right? So if you have students who are doing simple things like pattern blocks and learning base 10, all of that is in here, but it goes all the way up to applications in AP Calculus or AP Statistics. So this really is a tool that all of your students at all levels will be able to use. Now, I do have a question, because Beth, maybe I should know this, and forgive me if I should, but I'm not sure what your status is, what your district status is right now with Equatio. Do you have a license? Are you thinking about getting a license? Like, where are you at?
So in Duluth Public Schools, we do not have a license. This is kind of our first introduction to this. So,
okay.
And I'm not sure if anyone else in the region, do any of the other people here, do you have licenses for this yet?
No.
Okay. Well, I wonder what you think.
Well, and that's why I think Tinashe was so important when Julie and I, started talking. This was that missing piece, which, you speak to us all the time, that is something that districts are finding they need. Again, just for the simplicity, I loved when you just talked about, I looked at this problem, and if I was a support person who had to read that to someone, oh my goodness. So I think that this is that missing piece that, is coming to the forefront that districts are beginning to consider. So Julie, thank you for giving us this opportunity to present this, to everyone on the call and everyone that will be watching it as that possibility.
Yeah, we're thrilled to hear about it. Like I said, we get questions about the math side of things often, but that does bring up a good that Equatio has some free features. And then can you talk just a little bit about what like subscription and what that piece looks like?
Absolutely. So I'm going to direct you to that resource document that I shared with you earlier, because it does have a link to a comparison page. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. And there's actually a couple of other links we want to look at here as well that will be relevant. So the first thing I'll say to you, and this is actually, let's see, is this in my slides? It might not be. I have another slide deck for that. So let me show you that one. So that helps me, because when I know I have different slides for different audiences. So if you're not Equatio customers yet, then I need to bring up those slides. Okay. All right. So give me a moment. They haven't even loaded yet. Okay, this is what I want. I don't want to bring up pricing because I know our pricing has recently changed and that might be outdated. So I'll let Beth have that conversation with you when the time comes. Okay, so the first thing that you need to know is that Equatio is free for teachers. Okay, so there is a link on the resource document to free for teachers. So if you want to have access to a premium account, you can do it right now by signing up with your school email account. Okay, so what schools buy Equatio for is for students. And I think you already have seen all of the reasons why you would want to get this for all of your students, right? Another thing that we need to consider is that not only is math kind of like at the bottom of the barrel with regards to technology, but we're kind of at the bottom of the barrel, like in terms of, outcomes as well. Is that true in your districts? It's not like anybody's like killing it with math. So I wonder what would happen if you got something like this where teachers could be a little more creative, a little more innovative with their instruction, right? So that's really what I'm advocating for, is to see this as a tool that could improve student outcomes in mathematics. So if you had to have a conversation with a decision maker around why should we get Equatio, that would be my angle. It would not be the accessibility angle, because when we talk accessibility, we're talking about a subgroup of students, when really this is something that could affect all students, right? Another thing to consider is that if you are representing that subgroup from an inclusion standpoint, we don't want to be purchasing tools that only some kids get. And then it's like, okay, you're a special kid, so we're going to give you this. The other kids don't need it, right? It benefits everyone, including the students who really, really need that functionality, to know that everyone has it. And I'm not like different just because I have access to that tool. Does that make sense? So let's see. Next step. So if you opened up Equatio today, you have a 30-day trial, okay? And that would be true for students as well. So let's say you go into a classroom. Let's say you have a student that you work one-on-one with. Let's say you tell a teacher about it. Everybody gets a 30-day trial the first time they use Equatio. So you'll have access to that premium functionality. And of course, if you want to go beyond that, there are some options. We have domain pilots that are available. So let's say that you wanted to try before you buy, then that's something that you can follow up with Beth about. She can also talk to you about licensing and give you a quote so that you would know, what that investment would be if you decided to make the purchase. And it is 3 o'clock. So I'm going to say, if you need any more information, there is my contact information. And you also know how to reach Beth, who would be your person you would talk to if you were, interested in buying.
So beautiful, Tinashe. I appreciate all the content that you brought to us today in such an engaging presentation. Did anyone have any questions? If you have a minute, Tinashe.
I'm good.
Perfect. anyone has any questions, you can feel free to pick up the mic or type them in the chat, whatever works for you. And if you do need to take off at 3 o'clock, have a great rest of your day. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.
Well, and noticing that it's the end of the school year too, Julie, just when everybody does come back and ask questions, if they don't come directly to us, we're